Happy Tuesday. And for those that aren't in Colorado, it's 60, I think 61 today. So I'm actually liking the sun and the warmth. It's a good break. I do like the cold. But, Catherine and I are coming on because we want to talk about, what we've been working on with our collab cohorts now, right? We're calling them cohorts.
Yep.
And how, we've had this discussion about transitions, but I want us to think about something. What if we planned for aging the way we do for retirement? And what could that do just for our thought process?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And one of our cohort members shared a financial planning, like the 4 pillars of retirement planning, not financial planning, retirement planning, which was really, really cool because those 4 pillars, one of them, guess what it is? Purpose, which is one of the things we talk about over and over in our collab cohort.
Purpose. That word keeps coming up again, doesn't it?
It does. And in our collab cohort, we're at the point where we're talking about how do we narrow down the topics or the big topic, right? So Our big topic in our cohort, and this is cohort number 2. So really excited to see these taking place. This cohort is running through the end of March. There's still time to join if you're interested. Go to our website, reach out to us, and we can get you some info. The first week, what we did was just identify issues in transition. That's our topic for this one, transitioning into senior care. The second week, we started to really prioritize, and that was last week. So it was really about how do we narrow down that long list that we got in the identification brainstorming.
Right.
Purpose just was like the word that kept coming back. How do we create purpose for the individuals that we're supporting here, the older adults?
And that's, I think, what's important, because I think when I was, in my early 20s, you get a job, you start talking about your 401k or some type of retirement savings, right? But no one talked about what do I want to do when I'm older or when I'm aging, or my purpose, right? It was always this: get your retirement set up, figure out how you're going to do X, Y, and Z. But then it's kind of an afterthought of, oh, I'm 60. I don't know. Do I want to retire when I'm 65 or work till I'm 70, right?
Yeah. So there's this really interesting dynamic, I guess, in my mom and dad's era. When my dad retired, my mom it drove her insane because for years she was the CEO of our household. She managed everything, right? Dad was at work. He was the money earner. She was the coupon cutter. She also had a part-time job for a period of time, but she, went to 5 stores to get the lowest price on groceries. She managed all of our kids' lives. There's 4 of us.
Oh, wow. That's okay. So that's a busy household.
Very busy household. So she was really the head of the household from that perspective. She made everything happen and run efficiently and effectively. Right. And my dad was gone half the time for his work. He traveled. So he was gone a lot. So when he retired and he was home full time, there was no conversation about purpose. It was just, hey, dad's retired. Let's go travel. Let's whatever. And my mom's like, oh my gosh, I have a life. I volunteer here. I do this work. I have bridge. I have friends.
Right.
And I think that if you think about even in the process of retirement, when you retire, what do you want to do to fulfill whatever purpose you want to fulfill at that time? Is it to go vacation in other countries? Maybe that's a purpose.
Right.
Many people will start small businesses, like even handyman businesses, or I don't know, whatever. Right.
My grandfather, who ended up passing from dementia, he drove what he called the old people bus. So he literally would go around town and pick up the old ladies, he called them, and they loved him. And the funny part was, he was good 10 to 16, 20 years older than everybody he was picking up. But that was his mindset, was, hey, you know what? I'm active. I'm fun. I'm having fun. I'm socializing. He was a socializer. Like, he would go play cards and, but so when because he did 23 years in the military, another 25 for the Postal Service. So he, that was his job, for the government. So he had a really good retirement, but he still wanted to do more when he retired. He still wanted to do something.
Yeah, you don't want to become useless.
Right.
Ever. Nobody wants to be useless. That's part of the trouble that we're having in COVID. And I know people already know this, is people feel like they don't have a purpose if they lost their job and can't go to work. I spoke with someone this morning who's a young person in her 30s, and she said, I'm just alone all day. 90% of my day, I am 100% alone, and I don't like that. No. And it's hard to have purpose when you're all by yourself. So she's creating, which is wonderful. She's creating her own podcast. She needs a creative outlet.
Cool.
Yeah. So as we think about our older adults, this is what they have been living. We're just getting a taste of it, right?
Correct.
So what can we be doing to?
Do you think we almost look at it too broad though? Like, because that's what I'm trying to get my dad, who's 63, to look at it much smaller. Like, Dad, you don't need to figure out the next 10 years. What do you want to do in the next 2 or 3? Because if we sit back and go, oh man, what do I want to do in the next 40? Like, I mean, it can be overwhelming. Are we almost trying to bite off too much?
I think you're right. And in the book Switch, they talk about how do you shrink the change.
Yep.
I don't have the book here. It's on my bookshelf. But for those of you listening, grab the book Switch. If you're interested in making change, being a change maker, being part of a bigger change movement, whether it's to feed, there's no hungry people on the planet or no homeless people on the planet, or like us, you want to see a big transformation in the way that we all age, definitely check out that book. So that's a great point, Francis, about how do we shrink the change so they're not trying to bite off the next 40 years. But
right.
This is Act 2 or Act 3, whatever. How do they want to be in this act? What fulfills them?
Exactly. I love that sentiment, Kathy, because I've been reading this book by Steven Schwartzman, What It Takes. He's the founder of Blackstone. And, there was this really interesting point. One of his people, Tony James, that worked with him, talked about the financial crash. And this is a quote: "Lucky to have historical meltdown right now for all you newcomers in the industry, because success breeds arrogance and complacency. You only learn from your mistakes and when the worst happens."
Wow.
So I read that and I was like, oh my God, that's like, yes, they were talking about the financial industry. That's fine. But we're in this COVID era. This is nasty.
Yeah.
So what are we going to learn from this? And that's, I think that's what I don't want to lose sight of. Like, yeah, we're in this unsettled time, but let's use this as an opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And that quote is powerful. So let's pull that quote out and put it in the notes for this show.
We'll do.
Such a powerful quote. And I'm seeing, I don't know about you, I'm curious. I'm seeing a lot of people in senior care lifting their heads up now because we're starting to see the vaccine, so they can actually take maybe a tiny breath. I won't say they get a big relief, but a tiny breath to say, we're going to get a little bit of freedom here pretty soon. And what does that mean? How can we do better? So I'm really optimistic that there's going to be some big change.
Let me push back on you.
Okay.
Are we really going to get freedom though? Because are we still relying on decision-making and the upstream work that got us into this place to begin with?
Well, I think we are, but I guess part of that is I'm seeing that people are questioning that.
Perfect. All right. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Because I'm really tired of, we just weren't prepared for this. We weren't prepared for this. I get it. We weren't, but who cares? Let's solve the challenge in front of us. I don't care whose fault it was we're here or we didn't do, right? Like, we still have to work the problem. There is a solution here, whether it's visitations or how we engage or how we retire or age. But it's just quit this victims. I don't want to say victims mentality. I don't want to kind of downplay it that much, but this idea that we just keep going back. Well, we weren't prepared. Well, no shit. Excuse me. No crap. We weren't prepared. Like, hello, it's been 11 months.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the difference is I think people really, really got it when the year changed.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's been a year. That's not a reason anymore. It's happening, but it's not a reason for us to continue this way. There are better ways, and there are technology options, there are process options, there are system changes we can make. I go back to, and I wholeheartedly believe this is not a people problem. I do think that bad eggs, I do. But this is not holistically, it's not a people problem, it's a systems problem. And
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And that's what we're all so excited to see. And you and I get to speak at the Ohio Assisted Living Conference coming up in June. And this is something that we'll be talking about is really transforming the industry and shrinking the change. How do we shrink the change so it doesn't feel like we have to take the Queen Mary? There used to be a saying, you can't turn the Queen Mary on a dime. I don't know if that's a saying. I might be old, but
we could use the Titanic, right? Can't turn the Titanic on a dime. Or an aircraft carrier. You just want something big, right?
Right. Anything big, yes. Yeah. So, we're not trying to do that either. We're really trying to shrink the change. And it is truly, the butterfly effect is fully applicable here. The small things. And let me give you an example. I was just on the phone with one of the members of cohort 2 for our collabs. And she said, I have to thank you and Francis. And I didn't get her permission to say it on air. I didn't ask. But she said, I want to thank you and Francis for what you're doing because the work that I'm doing has already been impacted by what we're talking about in the cohort.
Wow.
And the idea of the book Upstream, which she did go by and she's reading, she said, I really used to think of everything in this really high level and understanding now that we can start with the small things. We can start with just some daily conversations, some small thing and get people bought in. And then we begin to build that groundswell and make the change. And her words were, it's impacting so many people through me from you. So wow. I feel really good about that. And
I do. And that's why I think going back to what you said is if you look at the people we've had in the cohorts, the 2 that we've done now, they're a very diverse group, right, of thought processes and people, but yet they all still have that same desire to improve. Yeah. And I think that's the hope that I have is that's why the system is the system. I'm not worried about the people because there are great, amazing people out there who just need, I would say that confidence that their voice will be heard, but not only that, will take that voice and turn into action.
Yeah.
I think that execution, that implementation, that is the key element of what is, in my eyes, the most critical step in what we want to do.
Yep. Yes. And to partner in it. And I love that we all sort of have our different opinions and ideas because that's the only way we get real change.
Right.
Is to hear each other's perspectives. So it's a very, very exciting cohort. Again, this one happens to be focused on transitioning into senior care. Our next cohort next quarter will be on death, dying, and dignity. We'll talk about the end of life process, hospice. So if you're interested in that, please go to our website or reach out to us. Yeah. And we haven't decided the 4th quarter yet, but we'll be making that decision pretty quickly here so that we can get that on the schedule. It's a great way to get involved and be part of making a change.
Right.
And I just really want to say thank you. I want a huge shout out to everyone who's participated in both of our cohorts because it takes something to show up every other week for 90 minutes and participate in our ongoing sort of online, offline conversation and create something. That takes something.
We're creating something from nothing based on ideas and a philosophy where we want to get to. And I think one of the biggest things that you bring to the table is this, we create this destination postcard, right? We really try to find out where we want to get to and then back our way into it. which I think is going back to that small change, right? Is these incremental steps are so important. And that's why, I have the Wall Street Journal here in front of me, and I was looking at something, this kind of popped out as our discussion. Brands target older buyers. Like, think of that as one of those incremental changes. It's all of a sudden companies develop product for those increasingly interested in aging well.
Yes.
So it is that incremental shift that we are starting to see, that this idea of aging well and controlling how you age. Yep. And that's what I really want people to take away from, from both the cohort and what we're talking about now is you are in control. You're in control of your retirement. You're in control of how you want to set up your aging. And if aging today scares you and you don't like it, come join us, because we want to change it too. And I don't know what that looks like, because I don't think it has to be set in stone. I think aging can be for each individual person. We need to stop fitting people in boxes and acknowledge people aren't designed to be the same.
Right.
So how can aging be the same?
Yeah.
It can be similar, but not the same. Yeah.
I love it. And I'm super excited. This year is going to be a good year, I think, because of this. There's going to be a lot of creation happening, and I get very excited. I'm very much about how do I create and build things. That's my sweet spot. Create, build, and grow, and that's happening. And I'm loving seeing all the creativity that's coming forward.
And we also want to, anyone watching this either live or on replay, don't be afraid to throw a question or a comment that you might not think is okay to say, because we want to hear those differing opinions or those challenging opinions or even those moments of curiosity, because everybody needs a voice in this, whether you're young, whether you're 10, 20, 80, 90, anywhere in between, because this is our lives. This is our impact, and we can have a voice.
And you just said it. This is our lives, and it's our future too.
Correct.
We're building our future right now. And I mean, all of us collectively.
Agreed 100%. And that was because I still get heartbroken, deeply heartbroken, when I meet an older adult who is scared to continue to get older. Like, that just breaks my heart. And I want to stop that mentality. And I don't fault them for it. I fault what systems we set up for them.
Yeah, well, interestingly too, it's our culture here. It's not the same culture in other countries. There are other countries that really revere their older adults and put them on a pedestal and look for them to lead and guide. And so there's some cultural shifts that I think we'll see happening here in the United States.
I do too, and I think we're going to get back to that understanding wisdom is important, not just knowledge. And that's one thing I try to remind my dad, who, I don't want him to retire yet, I tell him, because I think, all he would do is play golf, which isn't bad, but he's in Michigan, so he got a good chunk of the time you can't really be playing golf. So, but I also want him to keep his mind stimulated. Like, golf is great for that, but I want him, he likes to be challenged mentally. So and I think he'd drive my mom nuts if he stopped working, quite frankly. I really do. I don't think she wants him home. She doesn't mind having him home a little bit more, but not all the time.
Yeah. I totally get that. My husband, I come to my office every day because even now it would drive me insane to be 24/7 with my husband. And I love him dearly.
I'm not saying you don't, but that's what I'm saying is you have a philosophy of how you need to do your day. And so does my parents and so why do we stop that when we age? And that's what I'm trying to say is part of this planning process. Think about maybe every 5 years, you're reevaluating your aging plan, just like maybe you reevaluate your retirement plan or whatever it is. Yeah. Think of it as that book on the shelf. And I can't remember who said that, right? Is that Jamie? That's
right. Yes.
Yeah. But I think that's what I want us to get to is we have our aging book, we have our retirement book, and we pull them out and visit it every so often and make adjustments.
Yeah. And I think people don't know what that plan could look like. They don't even know the options. So that'll be an outcome of one of our collab.
I agree.
In the future, I have no doubt.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think what I want people to also, with our cohorts, the idea is, yes, they are maybe distinct or independent, but there is going to be some building upon each other, because I think a lot of our aging process is intertwined, and that I know one of your main focuses with Serenity, Katherine, is to break those silos. And I think that's a fair objective for all of us, is it needs to be more intertwined into everyday life.
Yeah, and I was telling you about a Washington Post article that Jamie Sarche, thank you, 2 shout outs to you, Miss Sarche, one of our favorite people. She posted on LinkedIn and tagged me on it, because it's so aligned with what I'm trying to do. The article isn't aligned. Sort of, it is. But anyway, it's an article that someone wrote about how to communicate with his father, who's 85 years old, in a hospital, about his father's care, not with his father, but about his father.
Okay. So to the healthcare professionals.
Yeah. And it just, this absolutely breaks my heart. This is where I get really passionate about what we do at Serenity. The first thing on there was know when to call. Why does it become the family's responsibility to know when to call, when there are perfectly acceptable options like a asynchronous messaging platform that's HIPAA compliant and private group channels that you could post whenever you want and they can reply when they can? You don't have to have all this emotional stress. And then know who to talk to was the second one. Know who knows what. No, let's give that information to the family and have it at their fingertips, so they don't have to try to figure out who does what and who do I talk to.
Wouldn't that be cool if there was an app that you could just put that in ahead of time so that they just open it up?
Call me.
Yeah.
And then the third one was around don't overwhelm the staff. I think that's an interesting perspective, because we get that a lot at Serenity. People will say, well, if we do this, won't the family message us all the time? We can't handle that. And what happens in reality is, no, they don't.
But why would that matter, though? I mean, like, I guess that's the part that I mean, yes,
I'm not staffed for it. They're not staffed for it, but I think that will change. But the reality is family probably is questioning more now than they would if you had an app, because they have no insight. They have absolutely, they struggle to get a hold of people in communities right now. And the old just give us a call anytime you want to know actually doesn't work. It just doesn't. It goes to voicemail a lot. It goes to a receptionist who transfers it, and you leave a voicemail there, and calls you back, or the wrong person calls you back, and it just doesn't work. And mass emails, they don't work. So anyway, I guess I took a little bit of time to talk about one of my passions, which is communication. So let's bring it back, because while that's part of our overall discussion, I think what we really want to leave people with is we have a lot happening with these cohorts, and our focus is really narrowing the focus, putting something into action, and measuring it.
Correct.
And we're about to spin up some studies from our first cohort to see that communication, that 14-day communication plan, and how it's impacted things. Because I suspect that it is impacting also turnover in our staff, because when staff is more involved, they're going to have more job satisfaction. So I'm excited to see what kind of results we get from those studies. If you're a community out there, by the way, listening to this, and you'd like to participate in this study,
yes, please reach out.
Reach out.
Yes, please. Thank you. It's fantastic. And I think though, but let's go back. Let's bring it back to this, how you want to tackle your aging plan, how you want to age. And I think communication is important, whether it's with a spouse, with your kids, with yourself, even. I think it comes down to being honest about what we want today and what we want tomorrow. And I don't think there's not a right answer. And that's what I want people to understand. And why I think, again, the groups and people that we have, that we work with in these cohorts, it's a lot of differing perspectives, but it all comes from that same place.
Yes.
We can challenge what we think aging is today and make a system that is more dependable for the future.
Well said. Well said. Come join us.
Come join us, and thank you. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Stay tuned for our guests. We'll get an announcement out here in the next couple of days, but it's going to be a great one. So we want you to join us as we continue to jump into the 2020 with a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. So I want everybody to have that hope, have that optimism. Let's stay positive as we continue to move through 2021.